Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, when done properly, the art of editing is one of those things that you should just be completely oblivious to. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. If you are, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, gives you a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere, places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, we're on the Twitter, we're on the TikTok, we're on the Letterboxd. I think we're on Tumblr. Yeah, we're on Tumblr too. For all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch something and we love to write about it and talk about it, we love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please, pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a fun one. We are back in the world of Apple TV Plus. If you do not already have the Apple Plus streaming service, what are you waiting for? Go sign up for it now, because pretty much everything on there is gold. And something else that's gold. One of the ones that is gold, it's on there now. It's called The Last Thing He Told Me. And it stars Jennifer Garner and Nikolaj Coster-Waldau. And it's the story of a woman who forms an unexpected relationship with her 16-year-old daughter while searching for the truth about why her husband has mysteriously disappeared. It is a thrilling, really entertaining ride. It is supremely well done for everyone involved. Jennifer Garner is great. It's adapted from the novel by author Laura Dave, and this is really one of those great shows that Apple is adapting and putting out for audiences everywhere. So if I haven't already said it before, go sign up for Apple TV Plus, seriously. But before you do that, just before, give us a chance to wow you with the art of editing, because this is one of those shows that it's high tension. There's a lot going on, so you know there's an art to it, and this is one of those shows where it's really, really well done. And we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with two of the primary editors on the series, the one and only Connor Davis and Trevor Baker, to talk about the challenges of this job, just sort of the nature of the beast when you've got multiple editors on a multiple episode show like this, and so on and so forth. And we really got some insight into sort of the art of editing and how important it really is. But like I said, please go check out The Last Thing He Told Me, which is on Apple TV Plus. But first and foremost, enjoy our talk with Connor Davis and Trevor Baker as we dive into the world of editing, because quite frankly, it's a darn good conversation. Hope you enjoy. I mean, just to kick it off, guys, obviously, just thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate this. And congratulations on your work on the show, man.
Thanks. Yeah. It's David, right?
Yes, David. David. Nice. Hey, you, whatever you want to call me.
Cool. Nice to meet you, David.
Yeah, nice to meet you both, guys. I love the show. And obviously, editing is such a, integral part of, doing anything in this business. But I think my first question is going to be for you, Trevor, because I notice you also have a producer credit on this. How does the job of producing and the job of editor kind of intersect?
It's mostly a creative producing position, and really sort of the way it intersects is finding whatever ways I can to support all the editors creatively, how to support Josh creatively, how to support the mixes and all that. So it's really sort of finding sort of the best within our sort of in our team, and sort of looking into that. Josh would at times, as any creator would, like he's brilliant. He had tons and tons of ideas, but every once in a while you get that sort of editorial writer's block. And so as editors, a lot of times we get that sort of writer's block too, where we're just hitting the keyboard, hitting the keyboard, hitting the keyboard. So he would call me in and be like, "Hey man, do you have any sort of idea on how we could find an alternative for a scene, or find an idea for a montage?" And so I would just come in, say a few things, and take all the credit, essentially. So for their hard work.
No, I mean, Connor, I mean, I guess I'm kind of curious because obviously, at least in my mind, when you're making sort of a narrative show like this, you need to have sort of one vision and one kind of, tempo, I would imagine is the right word. But I mean, you guys are kind of working as a team with different people doing different episodes. How do you manage to sort of keep the flow going, especially when maybe you're only doing like a handful of episodes on a season run?
Yeah. I mean, steal a lot of good ideas, as people, I'm just kidding, but like, as people are building their episodes, certain things are working, and everyone kind of, that sort of informs the direction that everyone sort of heads in, right, Trevor? Is that how you would say it? Like, yeah, it just felt like we were kind of, I've worked with Trevor on other shows, and it seems he's pretty good about building like a pretty like team environment, so we're working together and checking out other people's episodes and that sort of thing tends to be the workflow that we stick with.
And we really put a lot of care as far as building this team goes. Like, for example, Connor's got not to speak for you, man, but he's got a very unique background where he's done documentaries and commercials and all sorts of things for almost a decade. And then he's been a narrative for editor and narrative for a few years, and has been on some wild projects. So the brilliant thing, sort of working with someone like him with a diverse background, is we sort of come in and be like, we kind of only could see one way of cutting a scene. We bring someone like Connor in, and he's like, wait a second, guys, we could totally do, totally throw the kitchen sink at it. And we would always sort of constantly be surprised with that sort of diversity of thought.
No, I mean, that's wild. I had never really kind of thought of it like that, because I mean, obviously everyone sort of on the outside knows of the concept of the writer's room. But I mean, are there actually editors' rooms? Is that you guys literally around a table, like doing stuff, or how does that kind of work out?
That happens not in like a formal way, but it does happen. Yes, we like editors' meetings. You know what I mean?
Right.
A lot of brainstorming, talking, what's working, what music. Oh, that's a great song. What score are you pulling from? You know what I mean? That kind of thing happens.
And it really depends on the team. I mean, obviously, editors were very comfortable being in dark rooms by ourselves, never interacting with anyone. But luckily, when you have a team like we had on this show, we were all collaborative. We all ate lunch outside, and we'd all, we'd try to talk about our personal lives, but luckily we'd be sitting out there with Singer and Larry Dave, and we couldn't help but like sort of get excited about each other's episodes, and like Connor's saying, basically get inspired by what others were doing as well. So
lunches were work talks. Yeah.
See, though, now I have this image of like the editors versus like, the special effects guys at lunch playing basketball or that kind of thing. It almost feels like it gets cliquey on a big show like this.
We definitely play flag football with all of our.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm curious from both your perspectives, because I mean, obviously when people go to film school and I mean, they look at the industry and they want to get in, everyone sort of has that sort of vision of, I'm going to make my feature debut and do this, that, and the other. And then that kind of never happens. And then there's other things. But I'm kind of curious from both your perspectives, when did sort of the light bulb go off to sort of really know, okay, this is how I get my foot in the door. This is how I can be creative. This is how I can sort of move myself forward in this business? Because obviously, like when people are on the outside looking in, they never quite have the concept of how much of a village it actually takes to make a show like this. But I mean, in the reality, obviously, there's guys like you and there's so many other talented people who are all coming together to collaborate on this one thing. It does take a village. When did you guys sort of understand sort of how you could fit into the village, I guess is the right way to put it?
Connor, you want to go first?
I mean, I think that's such a personality thing for me. Like, I like collaborating with people, and I mean, I just like the team, that kind of team environment. You know what I mean? I don't feel like I have to solve problems on my own. It's great when that happens. You know what I mean? It's really great. But I rely on the people around me too to help kind of push it in a specific direction or elevate what I'm doing.
I got really lucky. I actually my first internship was for the show Breaking Bad. Like basically it's kind of the best film education you can, and it was in post essentially. And so learning sitting sort of in the background and learning from all those guys, and being able to sort of move on from there, and take every sort of team building skill that I had, and also just falling in love with editorial in that environment was just absolutely beautiful. And so I kind of realized it at the get-go, because when you sit there with Vince Gilligan, Skip McDonald, and Kelly Dixon, and all the other folks, and be like, oh wait, this is actually, Post is kind of cool. That's where the cool kids are, more than you really think. So
no, I mean, I'm curious because, I mean, especially from a film standpoint, we all know of the old story of Alfred Hitchcock only shooting what he needed because he didn't want the editors to screw up his film and that kind of thing. When you guys are in this process, I'm kind of curious, where does the creativity come in? Like, do you guys have a little bit of freedom on just sort of how you can sort of make the edit and adjust the shot and really sort of keep the flow? Or do you have basically your showrunners standing over your shoulder sort of every minute of every day?
yeah, absolutely not. Josh was a tyrant. He yelled all the time. No, I mean, Connor, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is like one of the more collaborative environments we've sort of been in. Josh and Laura, they were always open to versions, and there'd be times that, like, I remember, because Connor and I have worked together forever. And I remember there was this thing that Connor had cut, and I walked up to Josh because he was already really, really happy with this sort of teaser. And I walked up to Josh and I was like, hey, so Connor did a little something, and he kind of like, but I really like what we did. And I'm like, just trust me, come in. And we came in, we watched it, and Josh was like, this is it. We got it. We're all good. Now let me ask the boss, Laura Dave, the author. Laura's like, okay, no question at all. It was like, yeah, no, let's go with sort of the best idea wins. Sorry, my dog's providing soundtrack.
No worries.
Yeah.
It does feel like part of the job is to sort of have a, plan A, which is on the script, but have sort of plan B and C in your back pocket just in case.
Yeah, and just willing, I don't know, I feel like it's a good, just to try something fresh every now and then. Maybe you don't show it to everybody, just to be real, because that can backfire. But like being open to the material, you know what I mean? And your interpretation of what the scene, like how the scenes are coming together, and see if that inspires anything. And yeah, not being scared to try something a little different.
Now, I'm curious, as editors, how deep do you go into the material? Are you just working off the script, or do you even go to the source material to try to sort of get an understanding of the flow of the piece? Or like, how do you guys really, I guess, dive into what you need to do, especially when it comes to something like this? Because I can imagine there's going to be different perspectives and different flows depending on if it's something based off a book, or if you're strictly working off a TV script, or vice versa. Like, how deep can you go on something like this?
It's a really good question, and I think you make a really good point there too, that because this is based on a book, we basically had to find a way to breathe new life in this, because it is, it's been a bestseller, I think, on the New York Times list for it's basically since it released, essentially. So we had to find ways to go, okay, the audience they're such die-hard fans of this. How can we sort of create new life? And in that sense, yeah, sure, there may be storyboards, and there may be things that our directors is very, very specifically, sort of had planned. But with that being said, for example, I don't think you can predict. Sorry, I keep throwing this back to Connor, but I don't think you can predict. In episode 5, not to spoil too much, but there's a million bats that sort of fly that sort of fly out in Austin, and it's not like you can go, okay, bats, make sure you go in this direction. You can't really direct those. So I mean, Connor, I believe you guys went through. There was something. There was storyboards. There was things that was very specific, but you had to sort of do a mixture of visual effects, right?
Yeah, for that scene specifically. Yeah. The bats were filled out. That's what it was. We had the Austin bats come out, and we ended up filling them out. Also, that scene had its own story all on its own. But yeah, it went through a lot of versions. It was always good, but it went through a lot of versions. That big bat flashback.
You can plan so much when there's a million bats.
I know. Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm curious. I mean, especially because it's coming from a book and you've got this 7-episode arc. I mean, obviously there's going to be breaks, there's going to be beats. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious, does the scenario ever come up where it's like, okay, writers, you put this in episode 5, but it's really going to work a hell of a lot better if we put this in episode 4? Does that come up a lot?
A lot. Yeah, we actually, it was originally scripted for us to start with flash forward in the pilot. And we stuck with that. We definitely, it was a really great idea, because the book basically starts out
Now I'm curious for you guys because I'm curious for you guys because obviously part of your job, and I mean, I think I'm paraphrasing a line I heard from somebody else, but the creative payoff in sort of the behind the scenes people and people doing editing and work like that is when the audience can't tell what you did. I'm kind of curious from both your perspectives, especially when you were younger and starting to sort of get interested in film and television. Was there kind of a light bulb moment where you guys kind of saw or understood the art of not being seen, but knowing what they did?
Connor, you want to go first?
I'm trying to think about that. I mean, I didn't think about it like that, to be honest. I think that like when I got into editing, it was my favorite part of the process. It's the part where you get to make the world. You know what I mean? Make the show or like make the story. It's like, it's the most, everything else is getting pieces for that.
Yeah.
But putting it together is easily for me the most satisfying part of the entire experience because you get to see it. You know what I mean? You get to feel it. You get to have a relationship with the media, with the story that you're building. You know what I mean? And the characters or whatever. And like, I don't think I ever thought about like how sneaky I was being to build it. You know, I think it just sort of like naturally was like, oh, if it stood out, that wasn't a good thing. You know what I mean? Because it was taking away from the journey. That's I guess how I was looking at it.
Okay, cool. Trevor, what about
you? David, again, like that's such a good question because like I think you really editorial. I feel like right now with the Snapchats and the Instagrams, I feel like editorial is more sort of in the ether because people are editing themselves. But you know, when we first, you know, people when I would say I was an editor, people would go, "What do? Just take out the bad bits?" I don't understand what you guys. Finding this sort of, you know, but that kind of was the. So my dog's literally on his back behind me. So I hope he's not. Okay. So like definitely finding ways, especially because in the beginning you're like, oh, I want to be flashy and I want to be cutting, and it's like I want to make sure people know that I'm cutting. But to sort of find that this sort of the silent rhythm that people may not notice, but do notice in their subconscious, or even more, I think the hardest thing as editors is when not to cut. You know, we may have a bin full of footage, but when you can go, wait a second, I should just hold in this one shot, you know, that is, I think, probably the most difficult lesson to learn more than looking in people's eyes or, you know, making sure that you don't cut on a blink. It's really like, okay, I have literally a wealth of beautiful footage here. How am I not going to use this to sort of fulfill the same?
So is that the kind of the creative payoff? Like if you're sitting at the premiere and you're like, oh, here's the scene that I wanted to cut, but then it gets a great reaction, you go, oh, thank God, you know?
I mean, I think when you're sitting, especially when you're sitting with an audience, when they're silent and they're not silent because they're bored,
right?
Silent because you can feel the energy in the room that they're captivated. I think that is definitely there's nothing more rewarding than that. Even though you want them to clap at every edit. So
no, I mean, I'm kind of curious, like, how has the job of editing evolved as the technology changes? Because I mean, like you said, Trevor, I mean, you know, I can pick up my phone, film something, and technically I can edit that. You know, it's really gone to a different place. And I mean, how do you guys, especially when you're sort of in the business, stay ahead of the curve? Is it just technology, or is it trying to just figure out different ideas, or just not being afraid to play with sort of the material that you have?
I think and Connor, I want to hear your take too, but I think the beautiful thing about editing, and I have so much respect for visual effects and really the technology that goes into that. But the nice thing about editing is that, you know, whether it be Avid, Final Cut, Premiere, cutting on film, we still end up having the same sort of sensibilities and the same rhythms that, you know, they had 100 years ago. And so, but the nice thing is there are, as technology improves, you know, and it would be great if Avid maybe caught up a little bit because it tends to be a system that that updates slowly but surely. But with that being said, we tend to still just use the same methods and the same tools as if we were just cutting film. But Colin, what do you think about
I don't. These are questions I haven't thought about.
What
But
do
so I think like for editing, I think one of the things I've noticed is being able to temp things in more quickly. Like that's the technology part of it. You know what I mean? Temping in VFX, being able to cycle through. There's in a world where we're trying to constantly like make something new and fresh and original, like the ability to so quickly change edits, change music, throw in VFX, do whatever you have to do to explore what the most different version of this could be, I think is super helpful. You know,
I'm going to change. I think that was a bad. I'm going to change my answer to Connor's. I think that
you got to listen to you talk first, so you know.
No, but I mean, I think you're both right, to be honest, because I mean, obviously the technology allows for a certain degree of freedom and allows creativity to flow, but at the same time, I'm glad to hear that kind of the tactile nature of the art form of what you guys do is still kind of very alive and present.
It is. And we're making something different than like, I think you were talking about Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that, but like, we're just making a different product. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I mean, gentlemen, just, you know, this is a hell of a show. And I mean, just honestly, I think you guys did great work on it. And I mean, just again, keep up the good work. And, you know, thank you so much for the time today. And, you know, you go kick those sound effects editing guys in flag football next time you play.
You got it.
This is one of my favorite interviews I've ever had.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Really appreciate it, man.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.